Welcome to Dodgers Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in. Fans, today we have a very, very, very special guest, the absolute most creative pitching coach in the history of pitching coaches, Dave Anderson. I've got all the receipts with all the player interviews if you need receipts on that. Hey, Mr. Dave Anderson, a new proud papa, right?
That is correct. Very proud papa.
Tell us all about that process, man. That had to be cool.
Yeah, that was life-changing, obviously, but she came a week late. She was taking her time, and then it's something so special that everyone says it's going to change your life that second, and you can't prepare for it. But it's been unbelievable.
Yeah. So I say the most creative pitching coach in baseball because at that high A level at Great Lakes, you get so many new guys, and then you're liable to have like 84 pitchers on roster at one time, right? And so here's this guy with all these extremely talented pitchers. I mean, the amount of talent that goes through the pitching staff at a highly Great Lake level at Great Lakes is pretty staggering. And so you got to figure out how to get all these guys work. How do you do that?
Man, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer to that. They're all there for a reason, like you said. They're all super talented in one way or another. And it's just figuring out how to leverage the strengths that they have while bringing up the weaknesses that are present. And it speaks to the guys because they all put the work in. And it comes down to them buying in and trusting the process. And once they start to have a little success, all of a sudden the floodgates open. And, they do the work all the time. They see hours and hours of work that fans don't see, and they see the product on the field. But it's all the work they're doing leading up to it. They're doing it right now on their own. And then you get them for a season, and it's really go time.
So how much communication do you have with them in the off season?
So with the new CBA, we're in a dead period right now. It started November 23rd. So we can't reach out to them, see them at all right now. But generally, you have your call list of guys that you're not necessarily in charge of, but you're keeping in touch with, making sure they're sticking in with the throwing program and whatnot. And you're just constantly communicating with guys, making sure they're doing the right things, making sure they're following the program, they have everything they need. And once they start getting ramped up to bullpens, that's when we pick right back up where we left off.
So one of the creative ways that guys like you can get all these different guys in games is the Dodgers have really, just created different types of roles for pitchers like openers and piggybacks and bulk inning type guys. So can you take us through kind of all the new school type of roles that you guys have started instituting at the minor league level? Kind of give us the names of them and what they mean.
Yeah, I don't know that we necessarily have names for all of it beyond you have your starters, your relievers, and then we have guys that are your piggybacks, which are going to be bulk innings that are scheduled after a starter. But I think the more we get into this, the more we see being able to take down multiple innings is extremely useful when they get to the big league level. So the more, variety you can provide, whether it's one inning in a certain spurt versus a certain run of hitters, lefties, righties, platoon neutral. This guy can get 10 outs for us today. This guy can get 7 outs. This guy can turn a lineup over. The more things you can do, the more versatile you are, the more opportunities you get. So we're just trying to leverage that the best we can for the guys, for sure.
I know you like fastballs, Coach, so I'm going to throw a fastball at you right off the bat. We're going to start with Jackson Ferris. Nobody in the system is hotter than that name right there. Talk about him.
For good reason. Can't say enough about Jax. The year he had, he's another one that it's like he put together a 1-month span that was as dominant as I've seen at this level. His last outing in Great Lakes was an 8-inning no-hit outing. But to get to that point, the kid worked. And he is the type of kid that it doesn't matter whether it's ping pong, golf, baseball, he's going to kick your butt. And he's the one that guys want to play against or don't want to play against because he's tough to beat in anything he does. And he takes that mentality into it. And I think what's really special about him outside of baseball is if you were to ask him, I think he genuinely had an expectation for himself to pitch in Dodger Stadium this year, but was entirely present with where his feet were. So it's like he has this realism to him, but is driven by where he wants to be, and he never lets the two collide, which is really special. Yeah. And the work he does is second to none, for sure. He's a kid. We did a couple delivery things early on, and velo starts ticking up, 4s and 5s, starts hitting 6s and 7s, and it's back to the threshold that we had seen from him in the past, and rather than being good there, he came in the next day after the start and goes, now how do we get more? And it's like he's that type of kid that it's great, this is awesome, but now what? And I think he's that special type that good enough is never good enough, but he's also smart enough to realize in a 9-inning baseball game, good enough is all that matters. But in terms of his career and his development, there is no threshold of good enough. So he's continually pushing himself forward. But when he steps on that line, whatever he's got, good enough is just for him leaving the game with more runs on the board than the other team. So he's pretty special. You
mentioned the 4s and the 5s, but the secondaries, what do they look like right now for Jackson Ferris?
Man, that slider, slider's invisible. I've never seen a reaction. We were playing Quad Cities, and he struck out their leadoff guy for the 3rd time on the day, and we heard him audibly say, "I can't see it." And, it's a special pitch. There's a jumpiness to his stuff that, he's got the extension piece, which everybody knows helps things play up. He's about 6'7", 6'8". So it's above average extension. But on top of that, it's also extremely jumpy. You stand in the box with him, and it's like that thing's gaining momentum as it's coming at you. It's a different look, and it's extremely athletic. So that's the big thing he has in his corner is athleticism.
Is he as confident? We'll put it that way. Well, is he as confident as he looks on video?
100%. But also, he's the type, he's not going to say on a given day, if he doesn't have something, he's going to tell you he doesn't have it, but he's also going to back that up with, I'm going to go beat you with what I have. So he's not overconfident, but he's entirely confident in any given moment, for sure.
Yeah. I got to see a ping pong game or a game of pool against him and Robo.
Oh,
that'd be like the most competitive 10 minutes you've ever seen in your life, wouldn't it?
You'd need a cage match and a bell to ring.
You absolutely would. Okay, another guy, I think he's going to make his ETA next year. I talked to him about a week ago. Just continues to get better and better and better. You got to work with him quite a bit right before he kind of went on the shelf there for a little bit just to rest his arm and that whole thing. But Jared Karros, man, this guy is getting a lot better, isn't he?
Yes, he is. I mean, if you need any information on how we felt about him in Great Lakes, he made maybe 2 starts in 2023, and then we started him in a game 3 win or go home, and he just went out and absolutely shoved. He's the guy, you're confident in anything that he does because he executes. And I think some of his special talent is the fact that he can do it with all 4 pitches. So, he has a lot of levers to pull, but he's going to execute. He's going to pick you apart. And if you're going to go up against Jared Karros, you better have a plan.
Yeah. Have you ever seen somebody that young that has that much control over their sequencing and how to set hitters up?
I'm hard pressed to think about someone. And I think what's special about him too is he doesn't search for more. He's very confident in the 4-pitch mix that he has. That doesn't mean that you won't see a wrinkle come in this coming year. But he knows how to leverage his 4 pitches, different counts, read hitters. He'll sit and break down at bats following day after a start, and the stuff he sees is pretty next level. It's pretty impressive.
He kind of has that quiet smack talk to him too, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah. You're never going to see him outwardly talk, but when you step in the box, he's a confident dude, and he's about to compete his tail off.
Yeah. And he's another guy too. You have these young guys that have all this nasty stuff, and they're like trying to get everybody to swing and miss every pitch. He's one of the most confident young pitchers of saying, hey, I'm going to throw a strike. You're going to hit it. I'm going to get you out, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that really unlocked his year in Great Lakes moving up, and this is a little bit contradictory to some of the stuff that makes other guys better, is for him, the down away quadrant is really important because it leverages his angle. Yeah. So above average vertical approach angle into the zone, you're leveraging the steep move. It's a really tough look. If you stand in, it's like that ball's going to snip my ankle, and then it's kneecaps bottom of the zone, and then he can go up. So he's really good at the front to back game. The slider plays well off the fastball down away. And then once he gets those things established, it opens the top of the zone. So he's got a really good plan, a lot of ways to beat you, and obviously he just keeps shoving wherever he goes right now.
One of the best curveballs in the minor leagues too, isn't it?
What makes his so good is the steep release. So really high, there's a lot of depth to it, and he lands it. So that's another thing, though, is being able to play the up-down game with the fastball protects that piece as well. So there's just a lot of intricacies to his arsenal that he's really figuring out. Some of it's on his own, some of it's experience in game, and he's done a really good job.
So another guy who might be the most underrated dominant pitcher in the minor leagues, a guy that I believe had the highest swinging strike percentage of anybody in the minor leagues. I'm not exactly sure on that. Don't quote me on that. But I am sure that it was the highest swinging strike percentage of any pitcher in the Dodgers organization. A guy that has as much swing and miss stuff as anybody you will watch. Jose Rodriguez, best pitcher nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, he was special this year when he got to Great Lakes, and he's a funky at bat too. Huge, long, lanky, ton of counter rotation, high extension. He's around 7 as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's a monster. And the big thing with him is some of the guys, they leverage big stuff. His stuff isn't big. So he's got a 2-seam, a 4-seam, toyed around a little bit with a cutter versus left at the end of the year last year. Slider, pretty small bullet slider, and then filthy changeup. But the thing that protects him is, as a hitter, you have 4 pitches that they look like the fastball for a very, very long time. So you're playing a little bit of a guessing game. There's a lot of weak contact. There's a lot of miss. And there's a lot of late, sharp movement. Even though it's not big movement, it's late and sharp. So he has a lot of ways to get off of barrels, which I think is equally important to missing bats as a whole. And then when he throws the curveball in as a wrinkle, you have your front to back option. He's got a lot of ways to beat you as well. And he's just figuring out, he's got so many tools. It's how do we use all these tools? When do we use all these tools? And as he starts to figure that out and continues to go up in levels, I think he's extremely dangerous. So
a lot of times he comes in relief. So how do you get to that many pitches and those types of sequences in a relief performance?
Exactly. That's the question. So for him, sometimes on a given day, it's my slider, my changeup, and my 4-seam feel really good. Maybe it's my sinker, my slider, and my curveball feel really good. So he has enough options that you can get into counts where you can try and find things that he might not have on a given day. You get ahead, you're 1-1, you're 0-1. Now I have a shot to kind of feel my release for the curveball, or work on figuring out how to execute this slider and open the zone back up. But that east-west ability he has, it's really hard to cover. So he's got 2 pitches moving this way, 2 pitches moving this way, 1 coming down, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
What's
it like saying, as a pitching coach going, hey, Ferris is getting to his pitch count, so we got Karros hot, we've got Rodriguez hot, Henriquez down there, and we got all these guys ready. What's it like to be a pitching coach in that kind of scenario?
It's a pretty good feeling. You feel pretty covered. And I think the big thing about all those guys you named is you trust them coming into any scenario. So, there's some guys that struggle as starters coming into dirty innings. Those guys respond well to the dirty innings because they've had the experience doing it, which is part of the reason. How many times do you go straight to the big leagues and start? Some do. But a lot of times you're coming out of the pen, and who knows what that looks like in game situations. So the more you can get a shot to come out, man on second, 2 outs, man on third, 1 out. How do I progress through this situation that I'm thrown into that I'm not accustomed to? And it just becomes easier. So especially when you have the talent those guys do and the experiences that they've got under their belt, you feel real confident as a pitching coach making the call down.
Do you try to stay away from up downs, or are you okay with that?
Totally depends on the guy. It's partially baked into our workload. So some guys it's scheduled, some guys it's encouraged, some guys you want to stay away from. If you get 1 up down, maybe you don't want to go another up down in the next outing, depending on the previous workload. But that's all talked about, workload management stuff. But as a whole, we're definitely not afraid of the up down.
So do you ever intentionally kind of throw guys out there in an uncomfortable position because you know how talented they are, just to say, hey, we want to see just how they do when they're not comfortable?
No doubt. And some of that, too, shows them that at the end of the day, we're trying to win a ball game with them as well, and we trust them to do it. So that goes a long way in their development as well. But I think the uncomfortability in those positions kind of speaks to how in the past certain guys have gotten, not in our organization, but in baseball as a whole, you get pigeonholed to one spot and you can't respond to something different. So I think that's a big piece of what we're doing developmentally right now in terms of different roles, different looks, different innings even. That 9th inning for some guys is completely different than coming in the 6th, even if it's the same run of the order, same situation.
Yeah. Because I know like when guys have only been starters, they get up to the major leagues and they're used to having like an hour long to get ready. They're used to the routine being down by the minute. And then if they get thrown into a relief setting, they don't even know how to prepare for their outing because their routine's completely thrown off. So I think it's probably good that the Dodgers make every young pitcher have to do everything, right?
Yeah, the routine piece is the biggest part. And realistically with Edgardo, when he got there, that was, there were a couple things that he just needed to work through and fine tune, and he did that on his own. But the biggest thing was the routine. How how quickly can you get ready and still be fully hot to go in the game? What level do I get hot that if I get sat back down, I haven't lost my bullets if I get back up the next inning, later in the same inning? Just different scenarios like that you can talk about in theory, but until you do it yourself, you don't know how your body is going to respond and how your mind's going to respond.
You mentioned him. There was nobody that made a bigger splash in any of the minor leagues last year than Edgardo Henriquez. From day one, the spring breakout game where everybody just went, wow, who is this guy, right? And he just didn't stop. I mean, he made it all the way to the major leagues.
Yeah, I got to be with him in 2021 in rookie ball when he almost threw a no-hitter. He was pitching at the Diamondback Stadium, and he threw almost all fastballs by almost every hitter. And it was one of those outings that it was like, holy cow, this could be special. And I think he's really carved out his role, loves the back end, loves
he does good, yeah.
He lives for it. And he's the type, we started not to tell him, even though he was scheduled in Great Lakes, when he was up and when he was down, just strictly from the routine purpose. So we knew, hey, he's not throwing tonight. But he's down there, cleats on. We got a lead in the ninth. He starts getting loose, and he's coming in when his name doesn't get called. And, hey, I'm ready. I'm here. And it wasn't that he was pissed that someone else went in. He just wanted it. He's the first guy on the top step cheering for the guy that's in, but he's prepared. He wants the ball, and he loves the pressure situation, which is great.
I saw with my own eyes him throw a 94-mile-an-hour bullet slider for Tulsa. I was like,
yeah.
What? I mean, what? 94-mile-an-hour bullet slider. I mean, it just takes your breath away, doesn't it?
It does. And that was a big piece in Great Lakes, was just learning when and what to use, because a lot of times in his past, he could throw whatever he wanted. And just that little extra element of, he might have a guy completely beat, set up for a heater. We'll see you later. And he rips another slider and there's contact, there's a base hit, whatever it might be. And just starting to learn those nuances of, hey, this is what you got to recognize in this spot. And he learned pretty quickly.
Yeah, he didn't struggle a whole lot at any point of last year, but probably the period of the year where he struggled the most was right after he left you at AA Tulsa. So did he ever contact you like during that time, like, hey, DA, have you seen anything I've done here, or contacted you for any advice?
So we talk a lot. We're pretty close, but he's also really close with Durno Linger.
Yes.
He trusts Ryan Denick extremely highly as well. So from a pitching side, we're just here for support, because the next levels of pitching coaches, they're just as good. We're extremely, extremely blessed with the staffs that we have. But Edgardo's a special one. You just got to support the kid with what he needs, and he doesn't lose confidence. So he might be going through something. He gets up there. It's a different level. It's a new environment, and you trust that kid's going to find the answer and find it pretty quick, and he did.
Nobody I'm more excited about in terms of a ceiling and then also progress made than Patrick Copen. Wow, I could not believe my eyes when I saw him in the spring breakout game last year. He had gained like 15 pounds. He had cut his hair. I was like, I didn't even know who he was, right?
Yeah. Cope, I can't say enough about Cope. The way that his season ended is a way that you would never wish upon anybody in any scenario. And when he's going through the things that he is and working to come back, it's important to recognize that we're there to support him. And a lot of times we find ourselves as a team going through September, and he's the one supporting us. So it's like he's so special in how he views life, how he views his career, and what he's shown to this point in his recovery is just, no matter what happens, he's a winner. So everybody's in his corner. What he's done is friggin' unbelievable. He finishes surgery and he's trying to throw a plyo ball and getting yelled at that he's not supposed to do that. But he's the guy. He's going to do whatever it takes to get back. And, he's got full support from everybody in a Dodger uniform to do so.
Maddux Bruns is the guy that you didn't hear as much last year about as you had in the past. So where's he at right now?
Maddux, if you had asked him at the beginning of the year to map out what 2024 would look like ideally, I don't think anything that happened in 2024 is what he would have scripted. But the way he's responded has shown so much maturity, so much growth, and I don't view it as a lost year, and I don't think he does either. He's just working to get healthy right now, and I think he's really, really turned that corner, real strong, real healthy, and he's just ready to have the 2025 he expected to have in 2024. And, it would have been really easy for him to just toss in the towel to 2024. Things aren't feeling right, but he posted every time. He battled through different things, and, I can't say enough about what he did, even if the results and the amount of time on the mound wasn't what he wanted coming in. I still think that he had a productive year, and I really, really hope that when he comes into 2025, I'm confident he's going to come in and show everybody what he's capable of doing.
Everybody's timeline is different, isn't it?
It is. And there's a lot of variables you can't control, injuries happen, setbacks happen. And when you respond the right way, there's no telling what the limit is when you come out the other side.
You talked about Jared Karros being one of the smartest young pitchers in terms of sequencing and breaking down hitters and that kind of thing. Another guy that is super cerebral, continuing to make a lot of improvement, has a spike curveball just like Jared Karros too. But Peter Heubeck, he's another one that is in total control of his sequencing.
He is. He took a huge step forward this year. And I think this was a big year for him confidence-wise too. He's always confident, but for him to put up consistent results from start to finish for a full year, it was just impressive to watch. He has a special fastball. He can spin a curveball as well as anybody. The slider came a really long way this year, and the changeup came a really long way this year. And he's progressed himself from just a thrower with good stuff to a true pitcher. I think you might see some different things with the fastball this year, which will be really cool. And now it's just continuing to find, he battles. When your stuff's really, really good, guys put the ball in play less. So he had a few more free bases than he wanted, but he's got a plan to attack that. And I think he's in line for a really good 2025 as well.
One of the most talented young pitchers in the organization who hit a lot of the top prospects list about halfway through, I'd say probably 2023, was Payton Martin. I still can't believe the Dodgers and Jonah got him. Going to talk to Jonah Rosenthal here next week, the scout that found him in the 18th round out of high school. I still can't believe that. He's made some adjustments in terms of trying to add some pitches here or there, maybe change the shape of a couple of pitches. So can you tell us where Payton Martin is at?
Yeah, Payton has had an incredible offseason. He's unbelievably talented. So when you just look at pure talent and God-given ability, that kid's, it's special. And this year, he got punched in the mouth a little bit, and it was great for him because he's learning how to leverage that talent and what it takes to be consistent at a professional level against the best hitters in the world. He refined the slider. We made a couple adjustments there. Spin rate went up 150 to 200. So that was playing really well. We battled through a changeup for 2 to 3 weeks, and then we got that to a spot that profile-wise plays off the fastball the way we want it to, and execution-wise it's easier for him to land. He'll be working on the curveball, just execution-wise. But at the end of the day, he leverages the biggest strength, in my opinion, is that he truly does not have fear on the mound. So One of the things that really turned his season around, even when he didn't have his best stuff, he's ironing out the slider, developing the changeup, is he wasn't afraid to pitch inside. So he's establishing the plate, he's moving feet, he's keeping sides of the plate open, and it's not a comfortable bat against anybody if a ball's coming in under the hands. He's not trying to hit anybody, but if you're going to be diving out over the plate to spin, he's going to show something up and change eye levels, So his willingness to pitch to both sides of the plate, up, down, the way he uses the fastball is really important to his attack.
You know what the hit and sit velos were for him this year?
They fluctuated. So it wasn't quite as high as 2023 in Rancho. He's put some really good weight on this offseason. He's moving a lot better, just kind of freeing up some pieces of the delivery to a little more athletic-based stuff, and just get him more into a comfortable spot that you see the explosive moves into foot plant that we saw in 2023. I think we're going to see a lot better version of Payton as a result of everything that he went through and the work he put in this year. Everything we did started with the athleticism. So his bullpen days, we put him at shortstop, hit him ground balls at shortstop before he hopped on the mound.
Oh, really?
Yes. So that was part of his
See, I told you this is the most creative pitching coach in baseball right here. That is awesome, man.
Yeah, we did some out-of-the-box stuff with Payton that, he just has fun with, but all of a sudden you start to overlay certain throws, and it's like, that's the throw. That's the Payton that we know. So it's just kind of blending certain things. But yeah, on his bullpen days, he would start his throwing program with 20 to 25 ground balls at shortstop, throw across to first. He thinks he's Derek Jeter still, and let him go have it.
And that fed his confidence too.
Oh yeah. He needs, if you ever meet Payton, he's a guy that you cannot spend an hour with and not laugh or smile. Oh, yeah. He's just that type of dude.
Yeah. Jacob Meador, I got to see, he came up to Tulsa for like three outings, and I was so lucky I got to see him right there in June. Yep. This is a guy that crossfires, and this is another guy like Chris Campos, a guy that really made big strides underneath you. Not a big guy. He's not going to throw 100 miles an hour, but it's going to look like 100 miles an hour to the hitter because it's going to crossfire. It's going to stay invisible to him until you can't see it, and then it's going to have natural movement to it, and he's going to set hitters up very well too, and he owns his sequencing.
He does. He is an absolute bulldog. Definition, textbook, picturesque. That's your bulldog.
Yes.
He's backing down from no one, and that's one of the biggest strengths he has. Similar to Jackson, whatever version of his stuff he has that day, he fully believes that he's going to shove it down your throat for 9 innings if you let him. So I think that's one of the big strengths he has. And, on one side of the coin, he's pitched for a while. He pitched for Team USA in college. He's had a lot of different experiences. He's played with really good competition, TCU, Dallas Baptist. So his exposure to different environments helps him a lot. And, he figured out at a really young age who he was, and that helps him where he is now. But, he bought into a lot of stuff too, and he's extremely inquisitive. If he doesn't agree with something, he's going to tell you respectfully, and that's how you build the trust with him, though. This is why, if you want to do it that way, go ahead. You want to do it this way, this is going to be the result. And working with him is a lot of fun. We put a lot of work, a lot of bandwidth into the fastball. Quality of the fastball for him is pivotal. With unique release, unique delivery, low slot, the ride piece is really important, keeping him above that 17.5, 18-inch threshold, which is highly axis related, goes back to his posture, and he works through all of it, So he's very aware of what makes him good. He's very in tune to the work he does, and he's very in tune to his body. So he's always prepared.
Very happy that his dad, Paul, went to Oklahoma State in the 90s. That was awesome. Not happy whatsoever that he didn't go to Oklahoma State, right? Okay, talking about a guy who came in from college, Wyatt Crowell came in from Florida State, and man, he really took a big leap last year, didn't he?
He did. That's a really tough at bat. You talk about Jose Rodriguez, who we call T-Boo. T-Boo stuff.
I got to know the story behind that, Coach.
T-Boo, T-Barone is a shark, and he's got a shark tattoo on his forearm, so we call him T-Boo.
Okay.
Yeah,
nice.
So that's big T-Boo. So T-Boo stuff, a lot of pitches, shorter, smaller, later movement. So really deceptive in terms that everything looks the same and splits off close to the plate. Crow, on the other hand, really big stuff. The sinker's huge. The sweeper's really big. The slider bridges the gap. We've put a lot of bandwidth in now heading into this coming spring training to an option to neutralize right-handed hitters. He flashed in his last start 4 to 5 cutters that we worked on that were really, really impressive. But then you also look at guys like Logan Webb, who are plus sinker first, and they flash 10 to 12 vert four seams that play extremely well. So I think it's important, considering the way that Wyatt attacks off of a plus sinker, a plus slider, a plus sweeper, a downer slider. The option that we're going to add, whether it's a four seam or a cutter, it's less important to look at the quality in a vacuum and more important to look at how it impacts the rest of the pitches. So he's going to come in with another option that's really going to help him neutralize the right-handed hitter. He dominates lefties, not a fun at bat for lefties. And he's got the weapons. The changeup came a long way. We went back to a traditional changeup that he threw at Florida State. He's very talented, extremely twitchy, extremely explosive, and he can do a lot of things with the baseball that a lot of people can't.
So if I think I heard you right there, it's more about how he can shape a pitch so it can tunnel or play off of another pitch than it is to actually just make it a metrically better pitch on the track, man. Did I hear that correctly?
That's not true in every case, but in terms of like a supplementary fastball, a lot of times it is. So, for him to ride a fastball at 15 plus, we're going to start sacrificing what the sinker does naturally.
Yeah.
So we're not going to trade off what he does extremely well. His unicorn is that sinker. So we're not going to take anything that's going to rip away from that. But you add something else at 93, 94 that is notably different to the hitter. That 10 to 12 vert on a 4-seam might play like 18 when you're prepared for a -1 vert. You look at guys, a 20 vert fastball versus a 10 vert 2-seam. Same differential from a 0 vert 2-seam and a 10 vert fastball. So it's playing off those differentials, just being sure that in a supplementary form, when you're thinking about how does he get a right-handed hitter out, we're chasing that weapon that fits in the arsenal and doesn't affect what he does extremely well.
Nice. That's absolutely outstanding. Another guy that I got to see, I kind of felt sorry for him, but it was kind of fun too, because I think everybody would have taken the plot, but the arc, I should say. It wasn't easy though. I got to see Christian Romero in Oklahoma City. His first start at AAA was in Tacoma. I mean, it's like in the elevation, I'm like, oh my gosh. But he spent most of his time in Great Lakes. There is nobody that gave more to the minor league organization last summer than Christian Romero.
Man, Christian might have the slowest heart rate of anyone I've seen in the last 3-4 years. You could throw him out in any scenario and he's just going to go through it like he's playing in his backyard. So that steadiness, that consistency across levels, doesn't matter who's in the box. It just creates so much value with what he does in terms of presence and the ability to throw strikes. So career strike thrower, he's extremely young, and he puts in some back leg work and he starts flashing some 94s, 95s, flashes 196 here and there. So he sits in cruise control, but he can reach back as well. And I think one of the breakthroughs with him, he knows his identity. He's a sinker baller. He's going to create contact. He's going to pitch. He's going to pick you apart. He doesn't like the idea of pushing straight velo, but he knows how important it is. So eventually he broke through with that. And instead of pushing him like, hey, I want you to hit 95, we kind of reverse psychology that a little bit and said, hey, no 89s. Hey, no 90s. So instead of thinking about the ceiling, he starts attacking from the floor. And that's when we started to see things come up. And all of a sudden, he's doing the things that we asked him to do with his back hip and his loading mechanism on his own, because that's naturally how he's finding ways to create force. So I think there's a lot more in the tank velo-wise. I think he understands that his identity is never going to change, but that doesn't mean that he can't untap what's still in the tank for him.
Beautiful bride of 25 years and I went up the I-35 to Wichita for the last game of the season for the AA Tulsa Drillers, and I was so pumped because I got to see Garrett McDaniels. Dealt with some injuries, came back with a bang, so like about halfway through last summer, you're like, dang, this dude's legit. I can't wait to see him in person. Got to see him in person at Wichita, and wow. This is a guy Dodgers fans need to know the name of. Garrett McDaniels. He is awesome.
He's filthy is the word I would go with. He is filthy. Yeah. He's stuff over execution right now, but that doesn't mean he can't execute. And the big thing that, he really bought into was the angle with the slider. The way that his slider performs.
That makes sense.
Yes. So really high slot, sinker's nasty. Everything's coming downhill. And instead of thinking about spreading the zone horizontally, leverage the release angle that he creates, leverage the pitch shape. And he got away from, it doesn't mean, a given hitter that we're not trying to hedge out, work off of barrels horizontally, but he really bought into angling below swings. And that's when we started to see pitches presented extremely well with extremely sharp movement. The stuff has always been there. Sean Coyne did an unbelievable job with him in Rancho. He came up, the stuff was there. And he can spin the baseball. People forget about the curveball as hitters as well, because you're prepared for that sinker, that slider. He'll flash a 4-seam, and the curveball's a banger. So it's like he's got weapons to beat you with if you should show that you can handle the first two. Yeah. And they're not just supplementary pitches. Like that curveball's really good.
Okay, so Carson Hobbs, Brandon Neeck, Levon Reinoso, Christian Ruebeck, who went to OU, so I knew all about him, and then he went to K-State, so I still knew all about him, because unfortunately I got to see him against Oklahoma State's opponents, and boy, nobody has better stuff than Christian Ruebeck when it's in the strike zone, right? So can you talk about those guys?
No doubt. We start with Ruebeck off the bat. I can pinpoint, again, great work in Rancho. He went through some things. Him and Ramon Troncoso, they work through those things, and he dominates Rancho, comes up. And there was a game we went, I forget if it was the 12th or the 13th inning in South Bend, and they had, I think it was Dollar Beer Night on a Thursday night, and all the Notre Dame students are there, and they are just absolutely crushing him in the
Right
bowl.
up his alley, though.
Crushing him. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, this is good. This is good.
Yeah,
he's responding.
right
and
up his alley.
It is the highest leverage outing he had in Great Lakes, and it was the best he threw. So I think he really stepped up in that moment and proved to himself that, you belong here. You have the stuff to pitch here. And like you said, it's just getting it in the box. But, he's one of those guys that I don't think it's an inability to throw strikes. So it's not a concern of, hey, like, holy crap, we got to figure out how to get you to throw strikes. It's a consistency and a confidence thing with him.
Yeah.
So it's not like a guy that I don't know how we're ever going to do it. He's shown that he can. So I think this offseason is going to be really big for him. Mm-hmm. Working through the cutter as well. He was predominantly fastball slider. The cutter is going to be a nice weapon for him. He's always had it, but just figuring out the time and the place to use it. It's kind of a bridge for him. He's got really big stuff. So ride, run, fastball, big sweeping, hard slider. It's hard to get swings with that sometimes. So that little bridge, the cutter kind of bridges that. It forces contact. It's a little shorter movement.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, exactly. So he'll be getting back to using that a little bit more. But it's also going to generate swings against the slider too. So you've already got shorter profile to bigger. It's just going to open a lot of options for him, I think.
So how do you convince a guy like that can throw it 100 miles an hour, 101, whatever he can throw it, with that nasty slider? How do you convince that guy, hey, we actually need to get you to throw to contact more? How do you convince him of that?
I think for him, it's just a mindset thing. He's trying to break bats. So that was one of the things. Yes, he's an aggressive dude. So instead of this thought process of, all right, I want to let him hit it, it's like, hey, I want to break your bat. And then you get to 2 strikes, and now, hey, you're not touching this pitch. Yeah. And then it's learning the nuances of, here's an ambush spot. We're going to work backwards. We're going to flip that a little bit. And he's learning all that, and he's doing a great job.
Hey, Christian, we're going to throw this little bullet cutter, and we're going to obliterate the hitter and the bat all at once. He's like, okay, dude, I'm in, right?
Yep, no doubt.
Yeah. Talk about Brandon Neeck and Livan Reinoso and those guys.
All of them, they did some special things. I cannot say enough good things about Brandon Neeck. I'm not sure how many people know. I have it pulled up right now. Since July 13th, he was the best reliever in the Midwest League. .45 ERA, 31% punch, 7% walk, 0.63 average against, and 127 slug against.
Wow.
So, yeah. He put in so much work, and he trusted to a level that is commendable because, we moved him on the rubber. We made him do some uncomfortable things. He took his lumps, but he bought in. He stayed bought in the whole time. And, the big thing with him is he sees the big picture of, this might not be easy now, but the end goal might be significantly bigger than what I could have achieved beforehand. And he did all the work. He's an absolute nightmare for a lefty. The ball comes from behind the lefty's back.
Does.
It's tough. And he's another one, a little bit of ride run. But he plays angles, and the angles are extremely difficult because they're beyond outlier. It's double average. So it's coming in at an extremely steep angle. He took his lumps versus right-handed a little bit because it changed how his stuff played. Figured that out. Attacks inside out now. The changeup came a long way. And it was just like one thing gets ironed out. Okay, now this pops up. How do we address this? And by the end of I would say the whole second half, he kind of learned, this is what my stuff's going to play like. This is what it's going to take. And he was lights out, to say the least.
And Carson Hobbs, I know he's very talented. Livan Reinoso, he has another very live arm. So talk about those two. Yeah,
Carson, he's got an impact fastball.
He does.
So that fastball plays extremely well across the zone. First thing he did when he came here is we sat him down. He had a tough first outing, and you could tell that, that kid cares a lot. Puts his work in, and we asked him what he was good at, and he knew right away. And then we asked him what he did the night before in that outing, and it was kind of like just this light bulb of like, I didn't do that. And it's like, there's this element of you go to a new level and certain guys think they have to do more than they already did to get themselves
Good point.
there. So for him, it was just reinforcing, we're going to play the north-south game almost exclusively, until we get to 2 strikes. You are middle target. You are going top rail or bottom rail with the fastball. We're going to lean on the slider a lot.
Nice.
His highest in zone pitch. And then once he got those 2 down, started working through that, we brought back the curveball. And his first time out, he punched 2 with it through 6 and got 6 swing and misses in the inning. And he came in and he was like, woof. And we're like, now you're going to start to see when you can show the up-down game, it's going to open front to back. So it's not something that he's going to feature in terms of equal percentage fastball and slider with the curveball, but that curveball is going to supplement what he does, and it plays the power fastball up really well. So really bright future for him. Reino's another one. Man, that's just such a nice thing. You mentioned Edgardo, and then, here's another 100-mile-an-hour arm.
Yeah.
Ruebeck, here you go. So Reino bought into some things as well. Coming into the year, if you talked about Reino's year prior, the one thing he had to work through was the walk rate. And he went through spurts where he limited free bases extremely well. And some of that came to lower half delivery stuff, which he worked through. But his ability to throw the 4-seam, the 2-seam, and we really worked through a power slider, a gyro ball. It started to come in 90, 91.
Nice.
So it played extremely well. And then at the end of the year, he came to us and he was like, I think I can throw a bigger one. And I said, why? Like, why do you need it? And he goes, I think I can get more miss with it. And I said, when are you going to use it? How are you going to do it? And he had really good answers. So, we let him roll with it. We watched it. We monitored it, and it was pretty good. So all of a sudden, he's going 4-seam, 2-seam, short slider, all in a 90 to 98 to 100-mile-an-hour band. And then with 2 strikes, he's flashing an 85-mile-an-hour bigger breaker. And now all of a sudden, the guy that is just weak contact starts punching guys out as well. So, he can do a lot of things. We call him the fridge. He's got shoulders that you can just walk on. But he's an extremely tough guy, hard worker. Can't say enough about him either. It's like the whole list you go down. It's just the makeup of the guys we get in this org. The scouts do an unbelievable job putting guys in front of us with the talent and the makeup, and it just makes our job easy.
He would definitely win the arm wrestling contest as well, too. So
Yes,
don't want to get in the contest with him on that. Hey, saved the last for the guy who made the 40-man roster. He got protected from the Rule 5 draft. One of my favorites of all time. I love this guy, the Maytag Jack Driver. Yep. He's absolutely awesome.
Yes, he is. I cannot be more pumped for him and what he's done across every level. I think he's got, I know it's a sub-3 career ERA, but it's just silly numbers results-wise.
It is.
There are not many
he's
guys.
He's just getting started, man.
He is. There's not many guys you can look at in their career, and it's like, what year did he struggle? Well, he hasn't yet. So that doesn't mean he hasn't gone through tough phases. Sure. I have full confidence when that happens, he's going to work through it, but it's been unbelievable.
So Richard De Los Santos is the co-pitching coach with you. The Dodgers a couple years ago decided to go to co-pitching coaches. So is that a situation to where you say, hey, I'll work with this guy because my personality fits him, or do you all work with everybody? How does that work? And talk about Richard.
Yeah, I can't say enough about Richard. That's my right-hand man right there. The big thing, it's funny you asked that. I haven't thought about it because we've been together 3 years, so it's just natural to us.
Yeah.
But no, it by no means is it like, all right, I got this guy, you got that guy. Everything we do is together. So,
okay, nice.
There might be a time that somebody in a certain given moment relates better to Richard, and it's, hey, you go get him. Or a certain given moment, I might have a better spot to slide in or a different angle. But everything we do, we're together a lot, and we've done it for 3 years. We share an office, so we're in there nonstop, just going back and forth. And that guy, he works harder than almost anyone I've ever worked with. So anything you ask of him, you ask him to look at, you ask him to do, he's going to do it to the best of his ability as fast as he can. And working with someone like that is special.
Dave, you are always so kind. Every time I reach out and I'm wanting some information on a guy, you always are just very willing to give information, great information that we can report to Dodgers fans so they can know more about these guys and these guys can get the coverage that they deserve. So I can't thank you so much for everything you've done for Dodgers Daily.
Always, Casey. Thank you so much for having me again.